Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm John Featherston, the President and CEO of RISMedia, and I'm delighted to have you join us for Lessons in Leadership. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we have the privilege of having Dermot Buffini, the CEO of Buffini and Company, as our host today. Buffini and Company is the largest training and coaching company in North America. They hold a very unique position in the marketplace. They lead more agents and coach and train more brokers than any other company in the real estate industry. They've had a major impact on our industry, and they have coached and trained over 3 million professionals across 43 different countries. They have helped millions of agents, brokers, managers, and business owners build thriving businesses and help them lead fulfilling lives. Dermot himself has earned the recognition as an RISMedia newsmaker and stands as one of San Diego's top leading CEOs. Under his leadership, Buffini and Company has consistently been honored as one of the top workplaces in San Diego for the past 6 years. And today, we're honored to have Dermot and our special guest, a great friend, Bob Goldberg, CEO of the National Association of Realtors, join us in an engaging conversation on leadership. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to both Dermot and Bob Goldberg.
All right, John, thank you so much. Bob, great to see you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dermot. Thank you, John.
And great to see all of you. It's been a while since we've done Lessons in Leadership. I'm very, very excited about today's Lessons in Leadership for a couple of reasons. Number one, I just think the timing is very, very important for all of us. As things are a little rocky out there, that we have a discussion about things that we can do as leaders to prepare our ships, prepare ourselves for this season that we're in, and prepare for opportunities ahead. Secondarily, I'm very excited because this whole show was put together because we wanted to talk about leadership with people who've done it, who have lived it, who've learned from it, who've made mistakes, and have a track record. And today we have a great guest, not just a growth-minded leader and a great character, but somebody who's been at the helm of our industry here for a number of years and done a great job. Leader of not just the largest association in the United States, but in the world. National Association of Realtors is 1.5 million people strong. And as you can imagine, I'm sure that's the easiest job in the world, leading realtors. I mean, we love it. But we're going to learn today from Bob, who has great experience of the industry, but just great experience as a leader. And I got some questions for you, Bob. I got a rap sheet on you. I got way too much that I could ever ask you about or talk to you about. But I could probably make some money if I made this public, but that's okay. We'll talk about that later. John, we're going to have a chat here for a while, and then if you're okay with it, we'll jump back at the end and have some questions from the audience. So if you have any questions that are top of your mind that you're thinking about right now, make sure you just submit them. And we're going to spend a bit of time at the end. Bob and I are going to answer as many questions as we can and make sure this is a great time for all of us. So we'll see you in about 35 minutes, John.
Have fun. Have fun.
All right, Bob. Well, listen, there's a lot I could talk about as regards, I know you're a big football fan. I know you're a big Bruce Springsteen fan. I know you're a big character, but I've got so many questions for you on a personal level and just even conversations we've had and things I've learned from you. But I always start with a couple of questions just to kind of get a bit of background and kind of see who's shaped kind of your leadership journey and who's influenced you. So let me ask you this. Who has been a leader that you've most admired and why?
Well, it's always an interesting question because, of who we are and who may have had influence on us. And I have actually two leaders that I look to in my life that have helped forge not only myself as a leader, but who I am as a person. One of those is a legendary coach from the University of North Carolina, my alma mater. So go Tar Heels. Dean Smith, and then the second is one of the greatest civil rights leaders on the planet, Martin Luther King. Both for different reasons and both for similar reasons that I've drawn inspiration, but learned a lot about mankind, womankind, how to treat others, and how to make change.
So what would you say, what was the commonality and what was the difference in those two from just?
Well, both of them as leaders were very innovative and took chances. Dean Smith was known as one of the greatest innovators in college basketball when I was growing up as a kid. But what made him unique was he stuck to his convictions and his laurels of what was important. What was important? Here is a coach that, in a very prominent university, but in the South, University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, bringing on and integrating one of the first, college teams in the United States, but being in the South, bringing in the first Black player, but he didn't care. He was like, I'm going to bring in the best talent, but I care about people, I care about civil rights, I care about humanity. And what inspired me, not only about his innovations in the game, which are legendary, about how he changed the game, but how he changed and worked with people. And, people that had played for Dean Smith, I was not ever good enough to be a player under him. I went to his basketball camps as a kid, and he taught the same thing to us as campers, as basketball campers, as he did his own players, which was treat everybody with respect and dignity, because the bigger picture is not just the sport. It's about how human beings treat one another. And that's why he had such a great reputation. He is now deceased, but had a great reputation that all the players that played for him would always go to Coach Smith to ask him for life advice. He was like a father figure to so many people, and hundreds of players, but those that were related to that weren't just players. People like myself looked up to someone like him and said, you took a chance on something by bringing in a gentleman by the name of Charlie Scott, the first Black player at the University of North Carolina, one of the greatest players in the Atlantic Coast Conference in their history. And he took all kinds of crap for that. And how could he do something like this? But he did the right thing. So that's the Dean Smith legacy. And then I look at someone like Martin Luther King, who really helped affect change here in the United States, but worldwide as well. Again, another human being that stood for his convictions about how do we make a change in society, take a chance, which is, to me, what leadership is all about. Leadership is not about making the popular decision. It's about making the right decisions. And so I look at those as leaders in my life who inspired me. But again, it comes back to, as all of us as leaders, that you have to take a chance. You have to do what is right. And I do believe I had a boss many years ago when I started in this industry who once said, there's a lot of conflicting positions in life, pulling at you. What's the right decision? Make the decision of what the right thing to do is, because at the end of the day, if 51% or more of the people agree with what you're doing because it's right, then you're a winner. Hell, you can get elected president with just a slim margin like that. So, which is a whole different discussion. But my point being is, leadership is something that it always builds and you acquire and you learn from. And when I look at leaders like Dean Smith and I look at leaders like Martin Luther King, in Martin Luther King's case, it cost him his life, but he was willing to put his life on the line. I don't think there's a greater trait in leadership than saying, I'm willing to take the bullet for what I believe in. And I think that's what symbolizes great leaders that I try to emulate, that, I may not be the most popular decision, but in my heart and in my real beliefs, it's the right thing to do. Then I think you still come out as on top, and that people will then follow and be a part of what you're trying to accomplish as a leader.
Great stuff. Oh man, that's rich. A lot I could go there. So many questions. Just from a practical standpoint, as you say, what I hear there in that is either way, the impact on others and the legacy that they have because of how they acted, the principles they operated from, the focus that they had, understanding the higher calling. It's really powerful stuff. let me ask you this. You know, we're in a world of ChatGPT, AI, remote workforces. You know, we've all been challenged here in the last few years as leader. How relevant do you think those principles are today?
Oh, I think they're extremely relevant, Dermot. I think the reality is, as a leader, there's nothing that is predictable. There's nothing that is static. The items you mentioned, with artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and the pandemic and remote work and all the above. None of us as leaders have a playbook that say, here's how you deal with that. That, if we all had the luxury as leaders of saying, hey, let's go to the book or let's talk to someone that's gone through it, that's not reality. Reality is, in a fast changing world that we don't control, and that's the key here. We don't control. We're just parties in that change. We're participants in that change. Great leaders learn to adapt and decide, okay, what do we need to do in this case? I'm reminded, when the pandemic hit, and I had just been named CEO, just within 2 years of that, and here it is, we're faced with, well, what the hell do we do? Do we come into the office? Do we not come in the office? How do you serve a membership as a leader with your staff, with millions, of people, consumers, and your members? How do we deal and lead in that? I've been fortunate in my career, that I'm a member of a group with the Chamber of Commerce called the C100, where you have some of the top CEOs in the country. I've been fortunate to be a part of that, and I remember being part of an early conference call with some of the who's who of CEOs in this country. I mean, from some Fortune 500 companies. Far more impressive and powerful than Bob Goldberg will ever be. But these are people you read about in the news. And what I loved about it was, we're on a call, and it's like, I won't name the company or the CEO, but from one of the top 10 companies in the United States, and that CEO saying, what the hell are we going to do? Are we supposed to come in the office? What do we do? And I'm thinking, wow, I'm a CEO of, the world's largest trade association. We have 300 some employees, over 1.5 million members, and the CEO of one of the largest companies in the world is asking the question that I'm part of, which is, what do we do? Because none of us had a playbook.
Right.
And great leaders learn how to adapt by taking the leap of faith of saying, here's what we've got to do. It may not always be the right answer, but it's an answer that is nevertheless that people need to look at and lead from. And so, like you said, so I think all these leadership qualities that you pick up, you evolve in them. You don't just say, I'm at the pinnacle and I'm at the top, so therefore I have all the answers. I wished every leader that I've looked up to, I wish that myself, that I had the crystal ball, that I had every answer. But I think what makes us more effective as leaders, and I tell my staff this, if I had all the answers, I don't need any of my team. And effective leaders are effective team leaders. And the key is the word team. And, I know it's, I know it's the old cliche, like there's no I in team, and there, it's about we and not me. But that is true as a good leader, which is get the perspectives of other people that have their own ideas, their own line of sight, and get those ideas and those perspectives into the mix of decision making. Because like I said, if I had every answer, I could just sit in my office and say, here's what we're going to do. I haven't seen effective leaders at the end of the day become successful because they took it upon themselves to be the only one. It's not about your ego. It's all about collective insight and collective input to make the right decision. It's a little bit like democracy. The greatest good for the greatest number is very important than just to say I'm selectively going to make every decision.
And no, that's great stuff. And knowing also you're going to be unpopular because of that, because there's a small minority who can be very loud and very noisy that are going to wave their fists at you.
Hey, welcome to our industry.
Exactly. Welcome to, and leadership. It's parenting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to I want to say something, and I'm going to kind of go somewhere with it as regards some observations. When I've known you a number of years now, and you know, NAR had it like any big association. In order to operate well, there has to be a level of bureaucracy. You know, the I's have to be dotted, the T's have to be crossed. You guys do so much. You're Washington D.C. You're advocating on behalf of the industry. You know, it takes a lot of people. What I've seen from your leadership is the effect you've had for an entrepreneurial effect to affect change, which I think is extremely hard. You know, it's very, very hard to change anything in order to take that risk. I've seen you do it with technology. I've seen you do it with partnerships. I've seen you do it with education. I also think, and many people don't know this, but you know, during the pandemic, the innovation was that you and your team advocated, and with Washington D.C. to say our members are essential workers, and just that term alone ensured that our clients and your members, they could operate and they still sold. And I want to tip the hat to you and just acknowledge that on this call, because a lot of people might not be aware of that. But you know, how hard is it to, what is the process of how do you, you know, selling on the inside, I say is like marriage. Selling on the outside is like dating. You know, selling on the outside, like, where do you want to go? I don't mind. Oh, that sounds good. And after you're married, you realize, I never liked going to that place. You really didn't. We've been going there for 20 years. How do you share, innovate, bring people together to affect change, to take a risk, to innovate in an association? Because that's very difficult.
Well, you know, it's an interesting question, and I will put it to you this way, you know, and it's a little bit like when I gave my leadership philosophy. It takes a team. It takes a lot of people. Being the largest trade association in itself may give a connotation of bureaucracy and things like that. But the reality of it is we're a member organization led by our members. Our staff, me as the CEO, but with my team, we're stewards for our members association. It is really them, our members with all of our committees. It's our members with our leadership team that have been elected by and appointed by our members at large, who really have been there all along to be the shepherds for what's best for our members and for consumers in the real estate space. For example, when you mentioned when the pandemic happened, and you know, many of the businesses around the globe were being impacted, and yet real estate was deemed essential by the Department of Homeland Security. Well, that's because we have the most powerful PAC in Washington, Political Action Committee. You know, and I know people sometimes detest all the politics of Washington and all that, but thank goodness that we have such a powerful Political Action Committee where our members, even the highest percentages of members that contribute to our PAC, to make sure that issues and candidates that best represent our real estate and our communities are being preserved in such a way. So when the pandemic hit and everything was shutting down, the Department of Homeland Security actually created a list of, well, what is deemed essential to make sure that government services, that businesses all make sure they're being supported. And we went to the Hill with all of our, except in this case, it was virtually on the Hill, as the most powerful political action committee, went to Congress, went to the regulators, went to the agencies and said, look, real estate is over 20+%, 21, 22% of gross domestic product. You cannot let that shut down. There are people that still want to buy and sell property. There's still people that want to invest in property. There's people that want to rent property. It's housing. It's a basic human need. So if we shut that down and don't deem it essential, not only does it hurt a huge sector of our economy, it hurts a human right, which is seeking shelter, looking at new places to live, because that need, whether you have a pandemic or not, is still there. So we were put on the list of being essential profession, which helped us open up other avenues, such as the pandemic relief, where independent contractors who are typically not eligible for unemployment insurance, we, being the largest player with independent contractors, said all independent contractors should now be eligible under the Department of Labor to be able to get unemployment assistance. That was driven by NAR, but other professions benefited from it. So, it's really showing the power of who we are as a community. Because think about this, Dermot. Our members who are listening to this, our members serve every zip code in the United States. How many professions really do that? We have, our voice is spread throughout the country. And yes, we are a very powerful, large association, but it's only because we are mom and pop organizations in every zip code in the country, independent contractors.
Yep.
So everything that we do is about, like I said, the team, great foresight by our leaders to continue to invest in technology and invest in our industry, but more importantly, invest in our members so they can be successful with consumers. Because consumers, in the end of the day, are the ones that have high expectations for what we can bring to the table for them.
For sure. No, it's good. So I think people don't understand always with the National Association of Realtors. You know, I was very fortunate growing up in Ireland. I had 4 older brothers, because it always meant that there was any trouble in the school, I had a couple of 800-pound gorillas around to help me take care of business. And so I think the 800-pound gorilla of the National Association of Realtors does extraordinary work, and you guys are always advocating, and there's a lot of great work you guys do that a lot of people don't know. But I love what you said about it being built on the kind of like, hey, it's the practitioners in the field. You know, they say all politics and all real estate is local, and there's power in that. To the humanity piece that you met, and I just think it's interesting. I think you have a great perspective on this, because you come from an entrepreneurial home. You grew up in, you know what it's like, you know the conversations that are happening in realtors and brokers' homes. Why don't you tell them a little bit about the background of your folks and your grandparents?
Yeah, well, my grandparents, you know, on both sides, you know, their families were all immigrants to this country. And like yourself, you know, coming from a different place and a different environment, you know, I think many of us here in this country sometimes take it for granted. But you know, on my mother's side, when my grandparents, her parents, when they immigrated from Russia and Poland, and then on my dad's side from England, you know, they came here with no skills other than the clothes on their back. You know, I still look at my mom's dad, my grandfather, who the only thing he knew was how to fix a sewing machine. And so when he immigrated to New York through Ellis Island, he got known in the garment district in the turn of the century as the #1 person in the city of New York on how to repair sewing machines to make clothing, and created a huge business out of that. You know, you learn a lot from people, because this country is built on the backs of other people that have immigrated here. And so having family that have done the same kind of thing, it's a testament to the strength of and perseverance of people that make a difference in life, that had to find their own way, just like our members. They're independent contractors. They come from different backgrounds, different professions, and they've gotten into this business saying, you know what, I may not have gotten a degree in real estate in college with a master's degree, but I'm going to run my own business as an independent player, and I'm going to make my own success. And I look back at like my grandparents who did that. You know, my wife, for example, is a practitioner. She went inactive when I became CEO, so there would never be perceived as any kinds of conflicts of interest. And I saw all the hard work that she for years had to go through. And like many of the people listening to this, which is, you know what? You have to train yourself. You have to educate yourself. There's tools like with what your company does, Dermot. But, you know, no one's, as an employer, is going to say, for the most cases of our members, you know, these are the classes you must take. No, you're an entrepreneur. You've got to do these things yourself. And I can think of how many times my wife worked on deals where at the very end of it, the client changed their mind and she got bupkis, 0 for the transaction. Well, our members live and breathe with that every single day. So I think living on the and understanding, like in my family, people that became self-sufficient to learn to be successful is what 1.5+ million people do every single day. It's like no one handed them the book either of here's how you're going to make a lot of money and be successful and serve clients.
Yeah.
They make their own way. And yeah, it could get tough at times. And we have so many tens of thousands of members that have never gone through a downturn or through a tough market. But perseverance is the key because we've learned that from our ancestors.
Well, absolutely. Well, that's great stuff. And I know that, honestly, I think what I think is tricky, and I as I said, tip the cap, you've got to deal with the politicians, you've got to deal with the associations, but I think the key for your success has been the focus on your members. And I have two things for you, and because I know we're going to get a ton of questions here, but I think that perspective is huge. I know you started the Right Tools Right Now program because that was about guiding the members to go, you've got to invest in yourself. So I got three questions for you. One, what has been the best investments that you've made in yourself as a leader? And you can handle each one of these ways. So one, what's been the difference? Mentors, what's the investments you've made? Secondary is what investment would you recommend people make in their careers right now, whether they're a team, an agent, a broker, a person who wants to be a better leader?
So, interesting perspective here is this, and you use the word in the question, which is what should people invest in? It's investing in time and investing in resources to make yourself better. As a leader, what I have learned is that you don't have as we mentioned, you don't have all the answers. And so you have to seek expertise from other people that have gone through different perspectives so that you're so well-rounded that you're prepared for this case. Because like we talked about a few minutes ago, when the pandemic came or changes in technology, it's not a static world. So it's always moving, and you're moving because you're always learning, and you become a better rounded human being because you continue to evolve. So what I say to people is this, investing, like I said, in yourself by looking at, and not to make it a shameless plug for like what you do, Dermot, and that, but look for mentors, look for people that have been successful, look for training programs and educators that have gone through it before. They can give you perspectives. By the way, have multiple mentors and multiple perspectives because like I said, we all know this, every scenario is different. In fact, where you live, the environment by which you're growing up, the environment by which you live, the environment are you close to family? Are you not close to family? Real estate is local. So everything is different. Everything, what works in one community doesn't work in another. So talking and networking is imperative. And so what I tell members, trying to be a silo and saying, hey, I have all the answers, is many leaders have found that that's the quickest way to their destruction, because you may have in your mind the best way to do something is X, and the answer is Y. And why? Because you got different scenarios. So I would say take the time. Where I've seen failure, unfortunately, in this industry is when the market is like really hot. People are so busy because they're successful because the market has allowed them to be. They don't invest in themselves. And then sometimes if the market slows down, they're like, oh, I don't have any money to invest in myself, so I'm not going to do anything there either. The time to do something is when you have the opportunity to do it, like now, which is, you know what, the market is slower because inventory is down, and we can give all the economic reasons as to what's going on. Now more than ever is I'd be finding who my mentors are, what has worked, because we all know those that have been in it for the longer haul, there's ups, there's downs, there's ups, there's downs. You want there to be more ups, but you want to be able to prepare so that when it goes down, you know how to weather the storm. Right now, in a market that is not as robust because there's no inventory, there are many successful agents that are killing it. And why? because they invested in themselves, they took the time, they have a network of people they can go to. And if you don't have a network, you can invest in programs like what you all do in training and mentoring, in educating. Just getting exposure to other people that may not be in your own backyard is so imperative. That's what I've done as a leader. Even though I'm not an independent contractor, but I looked for mentors in my business. I looked for what worked. You learn as much about what not to do as sometimes what to do. And all of those build who you are as a human being that you can draw on. And I look back now saying, wow, if I'd known that 20 years ago, I might have done something different. But then again, that's the beauty of who we are today, that it's a cumulative effect of everything that you've picked up along the way.
No, it's great stuff. You can use the time well, and now's, as you say, now's a good time to prepare for the future. And somebody made an investment somewhere to prepare them for this market, right? One thing you said there, and just to kind of add just a comment to it, because I think it's consistent with what you said, there are lots of options. You guys offer so many courses and programs, and I highly encourage whoever's on here, go and check it out, see what's out there. There's people like ourselves out there. But I do think the most important thing, and I found with mentors, and you said it earlier, pick a mentor whose philosophy you align with. You're going to pick everything you outlined between innovation, risk, working with people, humanity. I would guess that you found mentors who that's how they operated. That was their style. If somebody's a transactional agent or door knocking, cold call, whatever, you should find people who they do that and align with them. So it sounds like that's something that's consistent with you too. And would you agree with that? Find people you kind of share philosophy.
And you know what? It doesn't mean that you have to always align with it. I have worked for bosses in my life, some very impressive ones, and some of them have been quick shoot, make a decision.
Yep.
Well, I've learned over time, maybe that's not always the best answer, because sometimes you've got to get perspective and take time and listen. I've had other bosses that were, again, very effective who never made a decision because they got into what we call analysis paralysis and they did nothing. And I'm looking at going, well, but that was an effective leader and that was an effective leader. But, you learn from all of them. You have a perspective. And as you said, it is a matter of looking at different people with different traits in different situations, because there is not a one solution answer for anything that comes up. You draw on other people that have gone through it before and talking to them and learning from them. I'm a totally different kind of leader today than I was just 5 years ago, and where I was 10 years ago. I thought an effective manager was you had to know every single thing that goes on. Guess what? You may think you're good at that, but everybody that works for you is like, oh my God, he's a micromanager. He's doing all this. So you got to learn to let go of some of those things. And I think that's what gets into the distinct differences between management or manager or leader. Very distinct. Some people confuse the two, and they're very distinctly different. And what you evolve to be really effective is a leader as opposed to a manager.
Great stuff. Oh, that's great stuff. All right, we're going to take some questions, but I do want to ask you about this because I remember you telling me this story, and I think it's a great exercise. And, I know when NAR was looking for its next CEO, that you were one of I don't know, was it 11,000 applicants or was something ridiculous? It was a global search.
I looked at it, was a million of them, but it was, hundreds and hundreds of resumes of people that come in for the world's largest trade association job. Yeah.
But the exercise that you conducted, which I think would be a really good exercise for people to take the time to think about right now. But can you talk about the exercise that you put together that was part of your interview process about what your intention in the future?
Yeah, Norman, thank you for mentioning that because it was something the most unique. Sort of, by the way, you talk about trial by fire and making sure people think that when they're going through interviews, because every day we as leaders we're on the stage for an interview every single moment. But I know when they got down to the final three, after months and months and hundreds of resumes and interviews for this job, which is now about 7 years ago when I applied for the NARCO job, one of the exercises that my search committee gave me and the other two candidates was all right, for your next interview, which could be your last one if you're not good at it, here's what we want you to do. We want you to accelerate that this is a year from today, and you are the CEO, and you're going to give a report to us as a search committee, like we're your board of directors, and you're going to tell us as the CEO that you've been in place for a year, what your successes have been for the year. What did you accomplish? What did you lay out? What are your KPIs, your key performance indicators? You know, what you had a plan being the CEO. Now you get to report to us as part of your interview. Here is what you have accomplished in your first year as CEO. And I was thinking to myself, wow. Now they handed me a blank canvas. I remember sitting there fretting over, oh my God. I mean, that's a tough one because now I've got to put myself in the place of a successful CEO. Yep. And I remember, you know, the best coach I ever had getting prepared for this job was my wife. And my wife was sitting there with me and she said, well, you know, this is what you wanted to do. This is the brass ring you're going after. They're giving you a blank slate. Bob, think of all the things you told me and you've told others that if you were sitting in that chair, here's all the things you want to do and accomplish. And here's how you're going to do it. Well, they're giving it to you on a silver platter, as they were all the candidates. And they were saying, tell us about your first year of success. When I went into that interview, because it wasn't an interview, the 15 people sitting in that room evaluating me, I was actually telling them, as your CEO for the last year, here is what Bob Goldberg has accomplished. What was amazing about that is it gave me a chance to really think it through and say, this is my chance to give my voice of what I can do for this industry. But the credit to my current leadership, the ones that are actually, when they hired me, turned around and took the document that I prepared for that 1 year and said to me, Bob, here's what you said in your interview as to 1 year. How fast can you now make all those ideas that you talked about? How fast can you make those reality now? Because you gave us the theoretical, you told us what you were going to do, you told us how you accomplished it. Here's the piece of paper you put together on that, make it happen. And I worked very hand in hand with my leadership team to accomplish many of the things that we've done as part of that team. And we've done that. And it's an interesting perspective of how to interview somebody, which is to task them with, you know, envision what you're going to do, tell us about it, but then we're going to hold you accountable for it. And I thought that was a very innovative way for an interview process, because it wasn't just that theoretical, here's how great I am and how my background applies to that. It's like, okay, put yourself in the shoes of a CEO and show us that you know how to lead.
And how many of that, a brilliant exercise, by the way. I'd highly recommend anybody in here, whether you're an agent, whether you're a broker, whether you're a team, sit down now and go, it's September 2024. What have I accomplished? What have I done? Where am I? How many transactions have I done? What skills have I learned? How much money do I have in the bank? How are my personal relationships? How's my health? You said take time. I just think that is a phenomenal exercise. When you told me that, I was like, genius. Curiously, how many of those things have happened?
Oh, I'd say probably 90% of them. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, in some cases, you know, did I throw out ideas? I just threw them against the wall saying, wow, if they're going to give me the slate to talk about it, I'm going to talk about it and say what I'm doing. It's another thing to do that and then have them turn around and say, great idea. We expect you, if you're picked as CEO, you're going to execute on those. So I would say almost everything that we see today, like we talked about the Right Tools Right Now program, where we're providing products and services to our members over the pandemic, many of which we gave away to help our members during that time. The technology innovations. I have a group that's called a strategic think tank, where, you know, I had an idea. I said, you know, wouldn't it be great if I could get leaders like myself from other industries that have nothing to do with real estate almost like a skunk work groups of top CEOs around the world in technology, other businesses, and just talk about what are things that are emerging that you're facing, that we are all facing, that we might be able to help each other and network. You know, we talk about mentors and getting a network. I have a group of like 15 to 20, it's now about 20, other C-level top executives from different businesses around the world that we meet with to come up with what are strategies, like how do you all deal with remote work? How do you all deal with members or your customers on this issue? How has artificial intelligence affected what you're doing in your business? And it may have an industry. It could be the telecom business. It could be other associations. It could be one of the top, technology groups that are out in the world that we all know. Those top level executives meet together with me. NAR hosts it, but it's not about just benefiting NAR. It's about benefiting each of all of us. That was a pretty far out idea that I threw out there. And my leadership, again, allowed me to put that together. Again, how does it benefit NAR? It benefits all of us because, you know what? I believe that success comes, and this is what I would tell every leader. When you make a decision, one of the things that I always look to is what is a strategic lookalike? Who is something, who or what is very similar to what we're doing that may have gone through it before, and what lessons have been learned from that? So this group of top people that I put in that document that I said, I'd like to have a group of other CEOs from around the world that have nothing to do with real estate come to talk to me, and we can learn from each other and talk about each other, because I view the issue that we all face in any business is one of the worst things you can do is just talk to people that are all exactly like-minded, because then you're talking to an echo chamber. Getting perspectives from outside where someone can say, hey, we dealt with that, and here's how it changed our industry. And I'm thinking, wow. And that's coming to real estate because it's a multi-trillion-dollar business. So people are going to want to come in and change us or disintermediate us or do something different because it's an attractive market. Well, how did the telecom industry change it when the government deregulated them and things like that? And having some of those executives that were people that you read about sitting in a room with you saying, well, here's what we did. It gives you an interesting perspective versus just always listening to people that want to tell you what you want to hear.
100%. Well, the great news is I just got a bunch of my next leadership meetings, my ideas, what I'm going to do. I have to make it sound like me. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but listen, I honestly, well, you and I could talk for 4 more hours, easy. I just think I'd love to, we're going to answer some questions now and really help people in a practical way, but I just want to thank you. Number 1, taking the time today. Number 2, I hope people have enjoyed getting to know you. And number 3, thanks for all you've done for the industry and also just being a great example of leadership. So great stuff. And I'm gonna, if you're okay, hang on for a few more minutes. I'm sure John has some questions from the audience. So over to you, John.
Well, thank you, Dermot, and thank you, Bob. That has been very insightful. I know our audience is enjoying the discussion. Now, let me take a step back because, Bob, you have been on the forefront of leadership of our industry for a long time. And the mission and the vision of the National Association of Realtors, and I'm going to read them because it's very brief, because as the question pertains to this, the mission is to empower realtors as they preserve, protect, and advance the right to real property for all. Okay. The vision is to be the trusted ally guiding our members and those they serve through the ever-evolving real estate landscape. So with that, I don't think anyone can find fault with the mission and vision, but tell us, how difficult has it been in the last few years to protect and defend the mission and the vision of our industry? And how much of your time is spent doing that?
Well, I look at it as a key responsibility of what the CEO does with our leadership team, our elected leaders. And we spend I would say every waking moment of the day and moments when I try to sleep on this issue, because it's no secret that our industry is under attack. Like you read, John, the mission and vision of what we're all about and what we stand for is very noble. I mean, helping people secure real property, securing shelter, living in communities, building the strength of communities is what we're all about. I mentioned it earlier. We have members that serve every zip code in this country. But when we say serving, it's not just buying and selling real estate. Our members are active in their communities to make them successful. And when you see an onslaught of people that are trying to insert themselves in our industry, I mean, there is no greater role that I see that realtors play than protecting the interest of consumers who are in this process. This is all about consumers. Our members serve consumers in every one of those zip codes. And we're instrumental in building those communities. We're building neighborhoods with those people. And when we say we're under attack, because people want a piece of trying to change the landscape of in an environment that I will tell you has been proven over many years. I mean, people attack, we have government agencies, the Department of Justice questioning the value proposition of our members. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, consumers are making investments in, arguably the largest investment in their life. It is a complex process, and having a real estate professional helping you through that process as a consumer is a noble but a important responsibility. And when you look at it, that there are outsiders that are trying to say, hey, our realtors are making too much money. Really? We know how little many times our members make. And the unfortunate part here, and this is the part that I try to tell outsiders when we're on the Hill lobbying, when we're dealing with regulators and lawyers and all this stuff, is be careful for what you wish for. I gave the example of, that I saw with my wife as a practitioner for many years, and I know many of the people listening to this deal with this. You work your butts off serving a customer, really helping them out, and guess what? There's no guarantee a transaction's going to happen, and there's certainly no guarantee of any kind of compensation. So you don't get paid for a lot of the work that you do. Well, think about a world where, you know what? Maybe now realtors turn around and say it's $300 an hour for my services. And by the way, many people listening might say that is a model we like, but there's no guarantee of a commission here. So we spend a lot of time educating consumers, educating lawmakers here on the Hill, here in Washington, regulators as well. And all I would suggest is to everybody listening is go to our website, competition.realtor. Competition.realtor. It has talking points. It has key components to help you educate consumers about your value and the value that you bring. We're a very competitive industry. Unlike what some of these lawsuits have been about, they want to take away from what we do as an industry. There is no greater competitive marketplace that I have seen. Think about it. What industries today where you as an independent contractor are selling your competitors' inventory? Okay, you're competing with people in your own office, and yet people want to attack that model and say, oh, you may be making too much or too little. As we tell everybody, every one of the people listening to this probably has a different business model, a different rate structure, different service model, etc. That's the beauty of the business. Consumers can pick and choose what they think is best for them. And there's not a cookie cutter model for this business. That's what makes it such an attractive profession as well.
That's a great answer, Bob. Dermot, this is for you and Bob, okay? A statement came in, it says, real leaders like Bob and Dermot, they seem to rise up when faced with challenges, especially unforeseen challenges. How important is it for leaders like Bob and Dermot to adapt and not be set in their ways? And how do you consistently surround yourselves with other leaders who help you through these tough times?
I'm happy to start, Dermot.
Yes, please. You're the guest.
Well, the question says it all. Is that you don't want to get in the way of yourself with your own ideas. I mean, yes, you got to have them, but as we said, effective leaders, there's a distinction between a leader and a manager. What I'm going to say is, has no disrespect to McDonald's. McDonald's needs to have managers to say, you must flip the burger every 3 minutes or else.
Mhm.
Leaders have visions but are open to interpretation by people that may be a hell of a lot smarter than you are to give their perspectives. I think that is the key, especially in times of rapid change. And we are in every single day brings a new challenge and a new change. And you have to rely on the fact that it's a collective input. Yes, at the end of the day, you still are chartered as a leader. Many times with 51% of the vote I get. I tell my staff, every one of you matter. Every decision that we make matters. But yes, I am empowered with 51% of the vote. So I might overrule you, but it's not about ego. It's about doing things that are the best. And I think a great leader, John, to your question, must park your ego at the door. And you know what? If someone's got a better idea than you, then you got to be open to it and say, you know what? Damn good idea. Let's look at that. Because the most effective leadership that I have found with myself is being open to allow people to say, I'm closer to it than you are, Bob. Here's what I think. Here's my experience. That's when you're successful, because the people that work for you want to take the hill with you instead of trying to shoot you in the back when you're the only one standing there. Dermot, I know you deal with this every day. That's what your business is.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, look, I think you said it, and I think the word is curious. Stay curious. What do your people think? What do your customers need? What's going on in the marketplace? I also know this. I think most good leaders, they study history. They know history, and they know a couple of things. The bad news is, or maybe it depends on your perspective, good times don't last. And the good news is bad times don't last either. And both are inevitable. There's going to be a peak and there has to be a valley. And I think good leaders stay here. We're just like, hey, we know where we are. We're going to acknowledge the reality that there's less homes to sell. Bob said it. Acknowledge the reality that it's much more competitive. Bob told me a stat last week. There's 1.5 million realtors competing for about 1 million listings.
That's okay? It.
So what is the reality of that? That's just the reality. So what do you got to do? You got to be competitive. You got to up your game. So for me, it's like working short, thinking long. I think for all of us as leaders, you just acknowledge the situation. For every problem, there's a solution. Every problem that's ever been, I believe somebody has dealt with it in the past. There's been a book written on it. There's information on it. As Bob said, there's mentors, there's people in your environment. I could pick up the phone to either of you two and say, here's a problem I'm facing, and I could get 5 great ideas from you of like ways I could approach that. So I think good leaders have hope for the future. They accept the reality, and they also have to be able to communicate, yes, this is true, but here's where we're going. And I think that's why I brought up the exercise Bob shared with me that he did in becoming CEO. I can't stress that enough. Like for every leader, if you're an individual, like call out the future. This is what we're going to do. And then you're able to lead people towards it. So that's my 2 cents.
Hey, Dermot, an interesting point, because you said it here. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That's what it's all about, because like you said, we can draw on other people through other networks, through other training, through other education. Like I always said, of course, my family probably has a different perspective than I do. If I had every answer, I don't need anybody else. I certainly know when I go home, I have no answers, apparently, because my family has all the answers and I have none of them. But you know what? That's important, because like I said, check your ego at the door and learn from other people.
Yeah.
So here's another question that's come up, and that is, again, for both of you. As we begin to close out the second half of 2023, a very rocky road year for our industry, okay, on all fronts, okay? What are the opportunities that you see towards the end of this year and heading into 2024 as an agent or a brokerage owner? Bob?
Yeah, I think that anytime there's perceived negatives or real negatives, there's opportunity, as we just talked about. So I think the rest of this year and the next year, I think the inventory situation will still be tight, but it will get better. We really look at the analytics on this. It's going to take a couple of years for inventory to pick up, but we're at all-time record low inventory, and we're at an all-time housing shortage. And we can't just snap a finger and create inventory out of this. We do think that interest rates will eventually slide down. Our chief economist is one of the top in the world, Dr. Lawrence Yun, predicts that they will come from these record highs. These 7-year or the 7% plus mortgage rates are going to edge downward. That will continue to happen over the next couple of years. Inventory will go up, but it's going to be a bit of a rough ride in that respect. And as Dylan mentioned a few minutes ago, accepting the reality of that, which is how do you better your game in the middle of that, is going to be really imperative. Real estate is always evolving. It's always changing. We're always on the hill pushing and supporting legislation, for example, to increase building. How do you convert unused commercial to residential? But those don't happen overnight. Builders can't build all the demand immediately. People aren't going to decide to give up a low interest mortgage, 2.5%, 3%, when the majority of mortgages are under 3% in this country, to say I'm going to buy up and spend a whole lot more money. So all that will take some time. But I think we said the key word here is perseverance, and pay attention to the analytics and the data. Look at what NAR is doing with our economic forecast, and when we give monthly reports, to pay attention to those trends. Yes. Because they may not always be the best news, but look at it as your individual opportunity to say, here's how I'm going to get better in that, because it will. And the veterans in this business that have been around for many years, there's a reason they've been around for many years, because it will go up and it will be even more prosperous. Some members, unfortunately, are still living in that day where you put a property up and you have 10 contracts on it. Well, that's unrealistic too. So I think it's just a matter of wait it out like we always do. It will get better. I can unequivocally tell you, because it always has. And the other elements of the economy are all pointing positive, which is a good thing. Jobs are in a good place, which is really the driver of the economy and ultimately real estate. So I think the sun is shining on the other side of this, and it's not that far out.
And to utilize the information, the data, the analytics to your advantage to educate the market. Dermot, I'm sure you're chomping at the bit to.
Well, no, I mean, look, we devour. I think myself and my brother, we're entrepreneurs, we're history students, and we look at numbers. And then we think about, okay, how do we get folks inspired to take action? So for instance, here's my little geek out. This is my report from the National Association of Realtors. Okay. And we take this gold and we can see when it's going to, okay, home sales are going to go up and rates are going to go down. These are the projections. Okay. Great. So we take that information and we put it into action plans, short-term, long-term. So what does that mean? Number one, there's what they say, a turkey can fly in a hurricane. When the market's good, all the turkeys are flying and they think they're flying, and then the hurricane goes away and it shows out it's not an eagle, you're a turkey. Unfortunately, you had a market, you didn't have a business. You had a market and you had energy, you didn't have routines, you didn't have activities, you didn't have a business plan, you didn't have goals, you didn't have finances in order. Our clients made 460 grand last year and took 8 weeks off. Our clients are going to get a large portion of those 1 million of listings because they're prepared for the opportunity. So I think number one is you have to plan for outlast the bad times. But I think Bob said it. You can't just wait. You've got to use the time well to prepare for the inevitable turnaround. And unfortunately, too many people will not be prepared for the turnaround. So now's the time. Outlast it, come up with a plan, tighten the belt, tighten the expenses, write some big goals, know the data. In our case, talk to your coach. We got a plan for you. And then let's meet the opportunity on the other side, because as I said, it is going to change. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who are living in their payment right now, and they're living in their interest rate. And when those interest rates come close, there's a lot of people who want to move. and they will move from a 3% to a 4.5%. But going from 3 to 7, a little bit more difficult. So there's going to be, I believe, and we believe, there's going to be a lot of opportunity here in the next 18 months.
Well, I
John,
think you're,
just
yeah,
wanted
go
to
ahead,
also- yeah, you'd asked about the difference. I think the same philosophy applies to both the agents and the brokers. You know, it's important that brokers are successful here because, you know, I've always had a belief in business that you follow the money, and the money, you know, we need successful brokerages. Because if the broker's successful, the agent's going to be successful. It's a very competitive marketplace. But whether you're a broker in this or an agent, perseverance, it's going to happen. So what you do when the time is down is the most important. I have always lived in a philosophy of do things when you can versus when you have to. When you can. You know, we come off of one of the hottest markets in the history of all real estate. Yes, you're new. Yes, you're learning. Invest in yourself. It's worth every penny to invest in yourself on this, because when it goes up, you want to be one of the top when it's up. And then when it goes back down again, which it will, you want to be able to weather that storm and be successful. Because like I said, there are agents you're going to be looking at today in this limited market that are crushing it. Why?
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at the profiles of every one of those. They invested in themselves. They networked. They've gotten coaching. They know the people that can help them.
Sorry, can
Well,
I
you know,
just,
Bob,
can I
yes,
throw
go
out
ahead.
like real practical thing of things that have happened? I talked to an agent during the week who got a call from a client whose daughter was selling a house and moving, and they used their best friend. So that was the thing. They picked their best friend. She was number 2 agent, the whole lot. Well, the father was bridging the loan so that they could make the move on the payment house. That house has been in San Diego, Pacific Beach, in a hot place for the last 3 or 4 months. And the reality of the situation is, this person I was talking to was saying, I dug in and I realized this agent is not in San Diego at all. This agent has the listing is in Texas, and using language that is wrong and describing the home in a way that doesn't even exist in Pacific Beach. Number 2, has it overpriced by about $400,000 and has no relationships, no traction in the marketplace, because there's been models out there for the last couple of years saying, I'm expanding my team and my people are here and they're here and everywhere, and they've no clue. So there's a lot of listings right now that still belong to other people. Or there was one here in Oceanside the other day. Somebody in LA has it. No clue on a local level. And if you're a hungry agent on a local level, I would highly encourage you to start challenging those listings and see where they are and contact those people, because they may be dealing with somebody who has no clue about that local market. So again, just another simple opportunity, but a byproduct of a hot market.
Absolutely, Dermot, and thanks for the insight. And as we come to the end of this absolutely tremendous show, I'm sure in August of 2017, when Bob, you took over as the CEO of the National Association of Realtors, I'm sure the first day in your position, you stood there and said, "Are we prepared for what's ahead of us? Don't forget there's a pandemic on the horizon. Don't forget there's going to be lawsuits in the next 5 and 6 and 7 years." No, the adversity that faces us and comes up every single day tests us to be better professionals and to serve those that we are asked to serve better every single day by the things that you, Bob, and Dermot mentioned this afternoon. And that is adapting, taking a look at your vision, being surrounded with great leaders, learning. And thanks, Dermot, and thanks, Bob, and everyone else that's joined us today for this second webinar in the 2023 Lessons in Leadership Survey series. I want to thank all of our attendees who have joined us today, and we hope you've enjoyed these conversations with 2 amazing guys. Dermot, you've brought us some excellent leaders throughout the entire last couple of years of doing this series, and you outdid yourself today with Bob. We're grateful to be part of this, and I'd like to thank Bob Goldberg and Dermot Buffini for making this possible. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Bob. Great chatting with you.
Thanks, everybody. No, honor and a privilege to be able to talk to you and your audience as well. Thank you.